Greetings, fellow card fighters. It is an honor for me to start a YouTube channel. I figured I'd hop on that bandwagon on card games. So today I will be presenting a deck profile on Eradicators, or at least that is what my current build is. Now, just note that this is a test build. I have not really finalized it yet. So if you see anything here you don't like, take it with a grain of salt. So, for starters, we're going to start with the grade zeros. Rough assumption. I'm going to just show you the grade zeros, and the Heal Guardians I'm also going to count as part of the trigger lineup. So, starter, Quinchu is Eradicator starter, because I'm really quite honest here. Who in the world really plays the Dragon Egg starter? Because I think that thing is just a little ugly duckling that got banished at birth. So we play Winchu because if you are a veteran player, Winchu is best starter in Eradicators, which second to none, other than Spark Kid Dragoon. But the reason why we play this is because it is also an Eradicator starter, so that helps slightly. Also over for that, we play the Dragon Empire over trigger. Say you're attacking with Valiant Saber or whatever, and you drive check this, you get 2 board restands, and you also get more cards in hand, which also helps towards more aggressive plays and more defensive plays. So you get more cards in hand, of course, and while you're also showing aggression at the same time. I'm only playing 2 stride crits. We'll get to that later. But I understand why people would want to play 3 or 4 for an easier stride cost. But the thing is, you're drawing so much in this list as of already. So striding should almost never become an issue. Next, we're playing 2 grade 3 heals and 2 resource heals. Let's be real here. We're living in a meta now where damage denying is common like the plague was back in the day. So these are very helpful for generating counter charge or soul charge, stuff like that, really. So that's why I play these. And it also fills up your bind zone as well. So say if you want to stride into voltage, that's an extra plus 6k to your front row based off your own bind zone. So it's really helpful with resource management and also late game. Next, we're playing 2 of the stand trigger, Sharp Impact Dragon. I don't think I have to really go into details. Yeah, it's a 5k trigger, but at the same time, it gives you a soul and a counter charge. So basically, what the heal trigger does, but times, so it makes it a lot easier to use. Because, say for example, you only have this heal trigger in hand when you have to discard for a stride or a G Guardian, and you don't have another copy of the grade 3 heal trigger in your drop zone, you don't get the resources. So this card's timing is very impactful. But with the stand trigger, you get basically the exact same benefits as this heal trigger, but during your turn. And if your opponent tries to damage deny you, you can say, cool, call this out. Ability, go to soul, revive, countercharge a card that was already face down in your damage zone. Really cool card. Really love it. Saw some guy, I don't want to say Worlds, but it was a tournament a little while ago, back before History Collection was invented. I saw them play this card. I'm thinking originally, what in the world does this card do? So I read it. I'm like, oh my god, that's a mandatory 2 of. Really efficient, really good card. 3 draw PGs. Can't really go into detail more about that reasoning. It's just a draw trigger PG. Nothing else really needs to be said about this. Next, 4 Res Fs. They're really good if you're on a Vanquisher base. And they're also errata to give you a draw whenever it's checked in damage. So yeah, that's basically all the triggers that you would need to worry about. Every single grade 0 in here. Grade 1s. We're going to play Elementaria Sanctitude. It's kind of mandatory in Premium at this point in time because cool, the opponent strides, cool. Free, no discard required if they're on a stride. And it's also a pseudo card. So say your opponent uses Rene or something like that. You can always call this out. It's an invalid target on board, so it just vanishes from existence, therefore negating a dominate attack, because it can't exist physically on board. So there's your reasoning for that. So we play that as a 1 of, because you can only legally play 1. If you could play more than 1 of this, you'd probably play it like a 2 or a 3, but that's besides the point. So next I'm playing two V Mighty Bolts. Let's be quite honest, the top 5 search to the grade 3 is really, really effective if you miss your Nusku ride target. And it's also a very good 13k beat stick for late game. It's also really good for boosting. So say you're attacking with a 9k, 13k booster makes a 22k column. And really good with aggression. Say you have no other pieces really left, you can always call this card out and be like, hey, cool, 13. Or if you're on XL2, 18. XL1, 23. That's like a 15k block right then and there out of their hand, making it really, really, really good. Next, 2G Mighty Bolts. Let's be quite honest. You've probably been there, same as me, many, many times beforehand. You have been stuck with the wrong grade 3. Cool. You call this. Reveal the grade 3. Search the deck with the Vanquisher target, add it to hand. There you go. And then whatever grade 3 you had in hand, you can either, 1, get rid of it, or 2, you could keep it in hand so you can have a good history stride turn. Therefore, and it also deck thins a lot. It's really helpful whenever you least expect it. So take that with the grain of salt. Or not, you understand what I'm saying. The only problem with it is that it stays on board, which might not be good for later impede plays. But, yeah. Anyways, next card. For Nusku. You want to deck thin as quickly as possible. See all your pieces as quickly as possible. Most of the deck has Eradicator in the name, other than some of the triggers and the Mighty Bolts. But that's okay, because like 85 to 90% of your deck is Eradicator name, so you're practically getting a target every single time. The odds are likely probable for you seeing a card every single time. So that's really good. Just why it's a 4 of. It's also a good early aggressive piece because it's an AK beat stick. You can just spam a board, and you can get not one, but you can get maybe 2 or 3 attacks a turn with this. And then later on, you can just push it back as a booster if need be. So, 4 Nusku targets. Next, I think this goes without saying that you need to play 4 Demolition Dragons. I'll be quite honest, the Sweet Command hit with this card was quite impactful for the format that not a lot of people saw coming. I'll be quite honest, that's not something I saw coming. But in the end, it's actually a very good decision for them to choice restrict it because of how aggressive the deck can be. But we're coping on Vowing Saber for now. I might swap to Sweet Command in the coming future, depending on how the format shifts and before the April ban list comes out. Assuming that we get an April 1st, assuming that we get a April ban list, we are sticking with Vowing Saber for now. Now, there are arguments as to why people play Sweet Command, and I completely understand why. I think it's more so, at the end of the day, user preference. So, yeah, moving on to grade 2s. We were playing 3 Zuitan. Not only is it a really good end of attack cards, you can push the soul, get your free draw, and because of that, you can keep up with your hand as while keeping up your aggression. And for every single card you bind on the opponent's field, you get plus 5k. It doesn't require a Gauntlet Buster on Vanguard to require a 5k boost. It's itself and Gauntlet Buster, so only Zuitan can get the plus 5k if you don't have Gauntlet Buster on board or on Vanguard Circle rather. 3 of this, you don't want to play 4 because it could mess with consistency for late game. You don't always want to call out down Zuitan later on, just so you can have better on-hit targets for make the opponent guard more. Now, here's where a lot of confusion comes, but I think this is more so player preference. I'm only playing 3 Spark Rays, primarily because that I'm currently trying out something new for this list, which I'll get to in a second. Spark Rays, place on Vanguard Circle, you check top 5 for an Eradicator target. Say, for example, cool, you ride into this. And hey, you get the search for a Demolition Dragon, gets plus 5k. Cool, you get a 22k beat stick mid Vanguard column. Really aggressive. Something that the Sweet Command deck had back in the day, back before it was hit. And also way before History Collection became a thing. So cool, 22k beat stick. It pretty much forces out a guard. Say you're up against Granblue, it's either they get the damage for column bard, but the opponent gets to draw 2 cards. Now normally some people don't care about that. It's up against the player you're playing against and what their hand is like. It depends. They might have it in there. But next, here's the optional piece that I don't know if you should play it yet, but I'm currently testing it. I'm playing 3 of the Ride Fixer, primarily because, cool, say your hand isn't really that great for an early game rush. You have this in hand, cool. Discard it, you check top 5 for grade 2 or less. Say if you're missing the Spark Rays or the Demolition Dragon for aggression, or the Nusku for as a matter of fact. Cool. So you discard the grade 2. You have a potential chance of seeing the grade 2 Demolition Dragon or Nusku, which is all really good early game cards to run into. This card doesn't really do much. It's really a situational card because it forces the back row card to move up the front row, which you don't want primarily because of Zuitan. Because Zuitan only procs whenever the opponent has 0 cards in their front row. But you're playing Narukami. That shouldn't be the hardest part in the world, unless you're up against Regalia or any form of cards that have resist in there. So resist is the only primary problem for Narukami at the current moment. And then the last card for grade 2s we play 1 copy of Cho. Bush Road is weird, and they decide to make this card basically say, hey, we're not if you're targeting the column, you're also targeting the unit on it, which doesn't make any sense to me because, hey, call, counterblast 1, choosing the column, you're not choosing the unit. And bind it. This was one of the only outs of resist for early game that would later impact the late game, but now since they're making it errated, you only play this as a one of. I mean, it's still a really good one of to have in the deck because, again, your deck is 85 to 90% Eradicator, so you can easily grab it off of Nusku for the early game. Cool. So you play one of this. Next we are playing for the grade 3s. We're playing a Forbidal. Really good for searching out your Vowing Sabers and your Spinos. Next, we are playing 2 Spino. Really good because you don't need to really play any more of this because you have Forbidal. And let's be honest, if you damage it, it's not the end of the world. You can still get it off the top 5 grade 3 searcher or whatnot. You don't draw it, that's kind of an issue, but at the exact same time, like, your odds of that happening are not likely. So, you play 2 of these. I think it goes without saying you play 4 Vowing Sabers because, 1, it requires another target either on field or soul. So either you're calling out 2 of them, or riding 1 and calling another one. You can also be getting it by Forbidal, because say, for example, you have to discard for an early stride cost. You can also get the call back out, which is really good because it reduces cards you have to call from hand. So it saves hand while adding to the aggression on the board at the exact same time, which is really, really efficient. So 4 copies of Vowing Saber, it's a very, very strong card for late game. And plus, your opponent is probably going to think you play Sweet Command if you miss the Demolition Dragon, so you can play some mind games there. Last year for the grade 3s, we're going to be playing 3 Vanquishers History Collection. Let's be quite honest, you're going to be drawing a lot, and there's going to be a lot of instances where you will always see this card. Primarily because Mighty Bolt's in the G Mighty Bolt, you can always grab it. It's not required to play 4. Or at least I'd rather play 3 of this and 4 Vowing Saber, because I'll be quite honest, it's either doing 3 of this and 4 of this, or 3 of this and 4 in this. So, I'd prefer to play 4 Vowing Saber here, which, as of course, anybody would want to choose, but that's just my own player preference. So we have this as our grade 3 lineup for this. So main deck is now done. Lastly, we're going to go over the G-Zone. Harmonix Messiah. It's mandatory at this point. You get the Guardian shoot off of it. It's free 20k shield in hand, assuming that you go second. If you don't go second, you can still technically stride into this. It's good against Link Joker, and if your opponent decides to damage deny you and you don't see the stand trigger, then you can always stride into this and take a damage. It's like a Boba from back in the day, but as a stride, so it also helps your GB count for your GB8 later on. While I don't recommend it, it is a choice. You can technically do so. Next. I'm going to show you play 2 Lightning Dragonite Zors as a history collection. It's not necessary to play more than 2 of this. Um, on hit basically goes away. The opponent chooses a rear guard, retires it. It is also really good at getting your bind zone set up early, or the opponent's bind zone set up early. So assuming they're not playing Granblue or any Mega Atlantica deck, really really powerful for later. You're gonna want to bind triggers off of this as my own preference because you're going to go into Vowing Saber, so the less triggers and drop zone the better. So you might as well remove them while you have the chance. Up next, we are playing 2 Exterminates. It is not required to play more than 2 Exterminates, but I think 2 Exterminates is good because, one, if your opponent's not already dead after 2 Exterminates, then you're gonna run out of deck. So you have to be careful with that. And really good against Excel matchups. And because you get power and you can also draw, which will keep your hand size back up for all the calling you're going to want to be doing to make an aggressive turn. So you have the 2 Exterminates right here. Next, we are going to be playing one of the Progenitor Dragon because it's now our only out to resist. And it's also a free stride, so you can save cards in hand, and this also attacks board. So it gets around resist because it's technically attacking the unit. Resist says it just can't be retired by opponent's card effects. I'm physically attacking the unit, so there is no card effect making it leave the field. So it gets around resist just fine. Also works good against Regalia, or Regalia, depending on how you want to pronounce it. That's kind of irrelevant, but Divine Gauge is really, really good against Nars, so you're going to want to go into this early. If they have like the Norns, they have the Yggdrasils all set up, or at least just a good amount of Divine Gauge on their board. So you're going to go into this, it pressures their board, and they want to have to guard early, guard their units if they're really that desperate, because you also have ways to bind those cards in the opponent's drop zone. Next, we're playing 1 Stunverse because it got restricted to 1. Makes a really good combo with Vowing Saber because it goes back to G-Zone before the opponent bind effect happens. So Vowing Saber can power up the board while you get to draw more cards and you get to draw more cards and call out more cards. And also you can power up your board. But I recommend calling cards out beforehand so that way the units get power off of Vowing Saber. For every 4 cards in the opponent's bind zone, the opponent binds a card from their hand, and you get to draw a card. So really good. It keeps your hand back, and it basically gives you GB2 right off the bat, which is really good for later on. Another combo you can do is if you don't see the Valiant Saber and you're just really, really desperate, you go into Stunverse first, use the skill, flip up the harmonics depending on what matchup you're in, and then you immediately go History Collection Stride immediately after that. Really good. You can get GB4 in a single turn, which is really efficient. You only need 2 more G Guardians, 2 more G Guardian procs to get the GB8, assuming that you can impede, but we'll get to that later. Next, we play 2 Voltages. Also really good. You have Stego in your front row. The opponent chooses 3 cards in their drops and binds them. That's an additional 9k to front row off of Vanguard's ability. And plus, it's a continuous skill, which makes it really, really efficient. So, say the opponent's playing Fenrir and has the Melissa activated and calls over basically your entire front row. The new units still acquire that power because it's a continuous skill. Really, really good for that matchup. And you want to abuse this as much as you can. But you only play it as a 2 of. Next, GB8. You want to be careful with GB8 sometimes because say you have an entire board. Your entire board's going to leave the field because it says on place retire all rear guards of all fighters, and then the opponent binds every single card in their drop zone and binds them, and your entire board gets plus 2k for each card in there. That can be pretty scary. So we're going with the 1 GB8. I would play a second one, but I'll be quite honest, I think the Progenitor is more important in this aspect for the early game. So 1 GB8, you can play 2 if you wish. I think that's also not a bad idea. You can cut Exterminate down to 1 if you want. That's just player preference, but that's whatever you want to do, you can. So 1 Exterminate. Next for G Guardians. Let's be real. 3 Impedes. Really good for board wiping. Say your board's empty and you have 3 heals in hand. Cool, you can impede 3 times. Nuke the opponent's board, because bind one, retire one, bind one, retire one, bind a card. Really good, and if you're on G Vanquisher after a history collection, that card's getting at most 15k off of just 3 impedes alone. So if the opponent's attacking Vanguard first for whatever reason, triple impede, basically bind the entire opponent's entire board, gets plus 15k. So rough assumption that's 26, 26, 46. That's 61k guard for the Vanguard swing, and it's what only be what at most 26, 28. Depends on what deck you're playing against. Next one, 2 Bulwarks. Bulwark is really good for the Steam Maiden matchup, and because you don't really want to go into impede against Steam Maidens because they can just use their bind zone for their own abilities, especially if there's a I don't remember what the exact card name is, the stand trigger that they have because when bound bot deck, it draw 2, return 1 card back to deck, and then you shuffle, which is really good for them. So almost you never ever want to go impede unless it's absolutely necessary to go into impede for that matchup. Plus Bulwarks is a continuous skill, so it gets around Gas Steel. As if you ever see anyone playing that deck. I personally know a few people who do, so that's why all the more reason to play Bulwark, because it's a continuous skill that gets around Gas Steel, because it's 25k shield, so you're at 1k power. Cool. 25k in 1. That's a really good shield because Gas Steel can't really form too many good numbers, so it's a good 1-card guard under it, and it also gets around Damp because you're G-guarding and not actually physically guarding from hand. Last card. We play the 1 copy of Counteract. It's a very good situational card, so say, for example, your hand's not looking too good defensive-wise, and you need to block the Vanguard swing. Cool, you G-guard into this. Cool, and the opponent decides not to bind anything, that's an extra 20k shield immediately. And if they want to bind their stuff to reduce the shield, that's on them. And it has to be front row more specifically. So, yeah, that's the reason that this card's really, really good. I still see people playing 2 of it and 1 of this. I think that's a little crazy, but that's just my own preference. So I would do 2 of this and 1 Counteract. It's a really nice card. Is it necessary to use all the time? Definitely not. But it is a very good situational card, and I highly recommend that you use this card for future games that you may want or do or have. Oh yeah, as it sounds, this is your typical Narukami deck that would specifically be playing Bowing Saber. If you would like a Sweet Command version of this, I will happily make one. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.